Welcome to Working Progress. We're so excited that you can join us for yet another episode. And I'm very excited and honored to have our special guest, Chip Scholz, with us today. Hi, Chip.
Hello, Brittany. It's so nice to see you. It's so nice to be with you again.
That's right. It's been a little while, but it's great to see you. Now, Chip is a longtime partner at TTI Success Insights. I think it's been
25
over
years.
20 years. Yeah, I was going to
Yeah,
say,
it's
I think
over
we're
20.
approaching 25. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chip, today we're going to kind of dive into the world of multi-science assessments. Like why should we care about this? But I'd love to talk a little bit about who you are and your organization. I know that you are passionate about executive coaching, and you created your practice, Scholz and Associates, over 25 years ago.
Over 25 years ago, yeah.
Yes, and you've been working through TTI. You're a nationally recognized speaker and author. You have books and lots of thought leadership and conversations. And so we're really excited to talk a little bit about that today. But tell us a little bit more. Can you tell us a little bit about why are you doing executive coaching and what got you here?
You know, I'm one of the lucky people. I get to do what I want all day long, and that is executive coaching. I've got a pretty robust practice. I've got 44 one-on-one coaching clients, and with various different companies. And it just is. It's a wonderful thing to be able to help people all day long. And I came to it. I came to it by the root of, I really wanted to be a motivational speaker. And then I found out it wasn't such a great gig after all.
Not so glamorous.
No, not glamorous at all. And the grind of making a living on the road and making a living standing 2 hours at a time and getting all that love. And then you walk off stage and it's like, who are you? So, one of the things I really value is that my longest term coaching client is almost 20 years.
Wow.
I've got several in the 15 to 18 year range. And that is just so great, is to be able to work with people for a long time. And, after a while, you get to know their families, you get to know all about them. There's a shorthand that comes about from that, but they still value the work that I do and working with them. And then I also do leadership academies. I'm doing a leadership series with Haskell, and we can talk a little bit more about that because that involves assessments as well. And I also do 360s and assessment work with a lot of different companies, and I keep myself way too busy.
Right? I thought you were going to try to slow down at some point, but
yeah. Is that what I told you?
Lies.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what that means, but
Yeah.
One of the things that I never really want to do is retire, and I just most of the people I know that are retired, I just never want to retire. Let's put it that way.
There you go. And you don't need to when you're doing something you love. So yeah, it works
exactly.
out. So you've been in the coaching space for a really long time. You've got these incredible relationships, these trusted relationships. It almost sounds like you're part of their day to day and who these people are. So why use for maybe someone who's not, I kind of call myself like an assessment nerd because I geek out about these things. But for someone
I've heard you call yourself that a few times.
For someone who's listening, who may not be in our space, why should we care? Why should they care about utilizing assessments in executive coaching, in your leadership programs, in these different, areas where you're working with folks to help them improve their work life or their home life or the balance of the two?
Well, Brittany, maybe it would be helpful to go to the beginning and talk about how I got involved with TTI in the first place. Years and years ago, 25 years ago, I got involved with a company called, it's now Trusted Advisors, but it was Resource Associates at the time. And I was trying to figure out how to do this business. I mean, I moved 2,500 miles away from all of my contacts to open up contact business, which is not the brightest thing in the
I was
world.
going to say that seems a little counterintuitive.
I'm telling you, we moved from LA to North Carolina and moved here cold, not knowing anybody, and had to build it from scratch. And I got into a business that I really didn't know anything about. I didn't know how to sell it. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know. And I'd been in the business about a year, and a guy named Gary Sorrell, who I think is still part of the TTI network, Gary got a hold of me and was talking to me about assessments. And, this is way back in the day when everything was printed and, IDS did not exist. And he got me involved in it. And finally, I had something that I could put my hands around and sell, because it had a high space validity. It was easy to talk about. Somebody had something in their hands. I wasn't talking about conceptual leadership stuff and trying to figure all that out. I could take a look, and I started handing out the 24 statements, or the 24 boxes with the statements.
Right.
And I said, hey, fill this in, and then we'll have a cup of coffee, and I'll run your report, and then we'll talk about the results. And that was how I got my foot in the door with a bunch of different clients. Is all of a sudden they took the assessment. I ran the results, using a HASP way back in the day when we were doing that. Yeah. And so I would come with a printed copy of their results, and I would walk them through it, and they'd look at me and go, "Oh my God, this is so cool!" And
how did you know that about me, right? That's always my favorite.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was just using DISC at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't figured out motivators at all, and even though motivators were there, I just I kind of resisted for a little while. And that is how I got my foot in the door and started with a whole bunch of different clients. Was that? And if I didn't have the assessments at the early part of my career, I don't think I still would have been in the business, because that allowed me to make some money and feed the beast and be able to stay as a part of the business. And so, really, TTI and assessments have been a part of what I do from the get-go, and a really important part of what I do. So do you mind if I tell you a quick story? This is why TTI is endeared to me so for so long. I had gotten a gig with a junior college board of advisors. And so I was going to do the assessment, and actually I was doing it at the time just strictly DISC, and we were going to do it on a Friday morning. And this was back in the day when you ordered books from TTI, and so I ordered the books, and I didn't look at them when they came in. And Wednesday night, I finally looked at the books. And they sent me "Your attitude is showing" instead of "Discovering communication."
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So here it is, 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night. I got to be there Friday morning at 7 o'clock to do this thing. And so I didn't know what to do. So I actually pieced together a workbook from a bunch of different PowerPoints. Now, this is back in the day when it took like 2 minutes to render every
picture. That wasn't a fast process.
It was crazy. And so at 3 o'clock on Friday morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm at Kinko's reproducing all of these workbooks. So I show up, I do the presentation. I'm on the way home, and I called TTI, and I got a hold of it. There was a woman named Maria that worked there. You might have known her, but I got a hold of Maria, and I said, it's my fault for not looking at the books. So here's what happened. I told her the story. She said, can I call you back in a couple of minutes? And I said, yeah. And so she called me back. She said, okay, make sure you send us your Kinko's bills. We're going to reimburse you for the Kinko's bills, and we're going to send you a box of Discovering Communication And you can keep the attitude of showing, and and it was just such a breath of fresh air to deal with a company that would stand behind its product so well. And so TTI has been, I mean, that was like a real heartfelt moment, and TTI has been a big part of what I've been doing ever since.
Well, thank you for sharing that story, because that was a little before my time, but I love
Just a
to hear
little.
just a little. I was around, just not here yet. I love to hear those, and I'm curious, how did it go with the client? Did it end up working out? Was it okay?
I was so wiped out. I don't remember really, and it was just a one-time thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it really went that well, but that's okay. I just moved on to the next
And
thing.
you're still here. You're still here to talk
I'm
about it.
still here.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit about utilizing the assessments. I know that you have an incredible array of coaching clients that you work with, but can you talk a little bit about what are some of like the problems or the challenges or the ways in which you use these assessments to solve things with your customers or your clients? I mean, you mentioned a pretty big client that I know you've been working with for a long time, Haskell. What
Yeah.
are some of the things that you do with them that help, solve those problems or challenges?
Well, everything I do starts with assessments. I mean, seriously, so over the years with Haskell, I think I've been working with Haskell 15 years now, and and anything from selection to leadership development to everything starts with assessments. And what I mean by that is, like, we started this thing called Leadership Series, and we started it in 2010. It's a 3-year leadership program. So we started LS1, LS2, and LS3. LS1 was in 2010, LS2 2011, LS3 2012. And so the first graduates from the program were in 2012.
Mhm.
And I use the Trimetrics EQ in the first year. I
Mhm.
use the Trimetrics EQ in the second year so they can compare the results. And then the Trimetrics, I use the HD and the EQ and the stress quotient, kind of the redheaded stepchild of the assessment
Nah.
business. But I think it's masterful. I think it's one of the best assessments that's around. And so I use all three of those in LS3. That starts every class, and the way that I tee the different series up is LS1 is about, you can't lead others until you can lead yourself. So it's all about self leadership. The second one is bringing the company into it, and the third one is about a coaching style of leadership. It's how to be the best internal coach that you possibly can be. And so it all starts with, hey, how do you know each other? How do you know yourself? And if you don't know yourself, then it's going to be really hard to know other people. And then how do I translate that to other people and have a better understanding of how they're going to react or how they're going to act?
Sure.
Um, I also use I started this thing during the pandemic. We were always looking for online content, and
Right.
we started this program called Communication Series. And there's roughly been almost 1,000 people have gone through Communication Series. So it's a 3-part series that is. I think the first session is 7 sessions, and then 6 sessions in CS2 and 7 in CS3, and that starts off with EQ. So it's a whole discussion of EQ, and then we use DISC. So we start talking about behaviors, and then in CS2, it's a Trimetrics EQ. So we put them all together and have that discussion. So it's part of everything I do. The coaching, So I coach. I created this thing called the 5 C's, and it's context, clarity, conditioning, choice, and character. Context is knowing who you are and what you're doing and that kind of thing. And the assessments fit perfectly into understanding context.
Right.
So
Right.
if you know where you are, then you know where you want to go. And so it's a springboard for a lot of discussions about development and leadership development, personal development, etc.
So talk to us a little bit. You just rattled off a litany of different types of assessments that you use. Different, we call them sciences, right? So when we say sciences, we mean for people who may not be super familiar with our lingo, we're saying we use different types of assessments and we can combine them into different reports so that we get different results. So you just named off, I think, 5 or 6 different sciences that you're utilizing in these leadership programs. Why is that important? I mean, you can get I'm leading you. You can get a little DISC assessment or a personality assessment online for free just about anywhere. So why is it important for you to utilize all these different sciences with your coaching clients or your leadership program participants?
Well, not to mention any competitors, and I won't, because I think some of them are really thin, and really thin on the background, really thin on the validation, really thin on the science that goes behind it. So I'll say this to say what I need to say next. I really admire TTI's dedication to research and development. It makes me feel great to be able to represent a company that takes the time to really dig in deep. I mean, some of the stuff that Dr. Ron is doing and the rest, it blows my mind, and just I've always wanted to get hooked up to one of the brain
Oh,
scans.
you should come check it out now.
Yeah, I know. I just want to find out if I have a brain or not. But I've always wanted to do that because I think that is so cool that we've taken the time to see what's working and what isn't. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. But I said that to say this, that when you only deal in one science, and especially a lot of the purveyors in the industry today say, my science can tell you everything you need to know about a person. Excuse me? Really? No, I don't think so. So it's kind of like if you only use one science, it's kind of like walking in front of a statue every day.
Mm.
And you never take the time to walk around behind it. But there's something different about the horse's flanks and the tail of the horse and the back of the general's head, and so there's so much more complexity than if you just get that one-dimensional view from the front.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like the tridimensional EQ, I think emotional intelligence lies at the core of a lot of stuff, and has a huge modifying effect on behaviors and motivators.
Oh, yeah.
However, if you take just EQ and motivators, oh my God, does that tell you a whole lot? Because in my little world, behaviors don't make as much difference when you've got the emotional intelligence and motivators in there. And behaviors are great because they tell us how we get out of our head and into the world. But with those modifiers, it ceases to be as reliable as what everybody has been saying about, oh, if you only know behaviors, you know everything about a person. Right. No, you don't.
Right.
You don't. So
it's just the surface, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about how you've seen this unfold for people. Do you have any stories that you can recall of someone who maybe, I don't know, for me, 20 years ago, when I was first exposed to one of these assessments, I saw the DISC part and I went, yeah, I get it. That's me. That's how I show up. But
Mm-hmm.
once you add those other layers into it, it's like you're living in color then, right? You go, oh, that's why I do that. And that, connects with that other thing. And for me, when I saw those extra sciences, personally, I think the trimetric EQ is the best report we have. Acumen's great, but I love that it combines all three sciences because you get this beautiful picture of, who you are.
Well, and the last 2 pages are masterful,
Yes.
because combining all three sciences into a narrative is that's fantastic. I think that's excellent.
Right. So can you talk to us a little bit, or can you recall a story of, someone who maybe had some of those aha moments, or it really changed the way potentially like they were showing up at work or at home, where they could actually see a measurable difference or a visible difference to their life?
Well, yeah, and EQ is the one that shows up most of the time in that vein, because one of the things about coaching that I love is creating awareness and uncovering some blind spots, and EQ has some blind spots built in. If all of a sudden you're in the bottom 16% of the population for self-awareness, and you think that you're the god of self-awareness, that's going to be a difficult conversation and a huge blind spot. So there's so many things that we can take from the EQ that create that awareness, and I see the stories all the time. I mean, it's the same stories you hear all the time about oh my God, I never really realized this is the way I showed up. And the other part of the EQ that I think is fascinating is, since it's self-reported, people can fudge the test. Let's put it that way. They can be overly optimistic, or they can be overly pessimistic. So I've seen it where, like, I use EQ for selection. And I've seen it where somebody is trying to put their best foot forward. That's the kind way of saying they're trying to answer everything the way that everybody wants the thing answered. And I see them all 90 plus in all the categories. So that's a problem. And when I see that, I go, even when I see that in the 360s that I do, or the coaching clients, or the people that I work with, but selection especially. The other side is, I see some people that are really low all the way across the board. And that often correlates with sense of self, a lower sense of self. And so you often see that when somebody is really down on themselves. So you can pick those things up even more than just what the assessment or what the science is telling you. But emotions are such crazy things. There's a new book out that I just recently read called The Power of Bad. And so we always think more poorly of just about any situation. We always think of the bad things that are going to happen, the things that are going to go wrong instead of going right. And you see that in the way that people process that emotional content in especially in their self-awareness and self-regulation. If someone who is better self-regulated is able to handle those kind of things and make a little bit better judgments. So again, you've heard all the stories. I've heard all the stories too, where people go, that awareness is just amazing.
Yeah, I personally had it happen where when I first took one of the assessments, I said, I don't do those things. There's no way I do those things. And somebody said, well, be brave. Take it home. Ask somebody at home, like, do you do this? And
so you took your first assessment 20 years ago? Were you 12?
Yes, thank you. Yes, okay. I sure was. And I took it home, and I was brave. Boyfriend at the time, married him, so it turned out okay. But he said, yeah, you did that 3 times yesterday. And I was like, oh, oops. So yeah, I think there's something beautiful to be said about really understanding how they correlate to the different sciences. You were just doing it and didn't even realize you were doing it, or maybe you did, but a layman might not, where you're saying, oh, well, when your behavior is this and your EQ is this, and then your acumen is that, it can create, different situations.
Well, and I'll tell you a quick story. I had a woman in a class years ago, and she had really long hair. And whenever she got nervous, she would pick up a strand of that hair and stick it in her mouth. And she had no clue she was doing it. She had no awareness that she was doing it. And finally, somebody called her on it in class, and she said, "Oh my God, I had no idea." Well, the assessments are the same kind of way. Is, you really, the beauty part about using the sciences and using the reports is that you're telling yourself about yourself, but it creates language around that, so you have language to talk about it. And I don't care whether it's behavioral language or motivational language or Acumen language or EQ language. We don't normally have language for that kind of thing. It takes the conceptual and makes it more granular, makes it more real.
And to me, it paints a clearer, more vibrant and full picture, right? When you started talking about that, I was imagining, like you're standing in front of a mirror, and that report kind of gives you that visual. But also then when you add in all those sciences, to me, things get more in focus, and you see all the different details of what makes that,
Yeah, it can be a little bit daunting too, to have all that information. So you've really got to be careful how it's presented. It's very difficult to do a debrief in an hour of all the sciences. I might be able to do a trimestral CQ in an hour, but certainly not other ones. And so I've done the Acumen capacity for as long as it's been around. I think shortly thereafter it was introduced to the network, and the complexity of that is just so, it's daunting. And even though I've been doing it a long time and I think I'm really good at it, I always learn something new every time I do it.
Yeah. And for those who don't know what Acumen capacity is, it's a way that you can kind of see how you view the world and yourself, and how you see yourself in it. So speaking of that, Chip, what are some other maybe lessons you've learned from using assessments with your clients? I mean, you just kind of said, while it's great and you have all this information and you have this clarity, sometimes it can also be daunting. Are there other lessons that you've picked up along the way?
All
these different
the language you use around them is really important. If you say, this is you, and this is the way you are. No, it's not. Because any science, and I think that's a beautiful part about science. I don't think science is ever settled, and science is is the continuous search for new and different outcomes. Some of the things we believed 50 years ago that we look at now and go, what?
Real, yeah.
So it can give you some tendencies. It can give you some good ideas. You may think that it's really accurate, which for the most part it is. But the other thing is, you're not doomed to be the same disc profile or the same motivator style or driving forces. You're not doomed to anything. So, are there some things that are predictive? Yeah, there's some things that are predictive. I think disc and driving forces is a lot more predictive, but Acumen is probably more reflective, and really talks about what's going on at the moment. EQ can be predictive, but the thing is, I think we've all learned this, but some people haven't, that we can all change, and even though we may hold on to some of the things that we were in the past, one of the things that I hold dear is that there's always redemption. We can always change. We can always be different. And we may have a drug problem. And what I mean by a drug problem is we may get drugged back into old ways of doing things. But it's there is redemption. There is things we can do. So if you don't like to be if you don't like to be a high D, Well, there's some things you can do about it. There's some things you can do to mitigate the negative effects of that while still embracing the really good parts of it. So that's one of the biggest things I've learned over the years is there is no such thing as a definite.
I love that. I think that's so important too, because often, I don't know about you, but I hear, oh, it's a test, or there's a right or a wrong.
Yeah.
And it feels so finite and, like it's black and white, where I think you and I agree that there's a lot of gray in there, and there can be some change, and even tweaking one area can have a profound impact on other things, right? If you
Yeah.
just grow, for instance, your EQ, maybe if you're a Heidi, me, you show up a little less aggressive or a little less, over the top. If you
Well,
can
and
work on
and
that.
so even that high D with improving self-regulation, if you move the needle on self-regulation, you will get all kinds of bang for the buck because that high D is not going to come off as a bull in a china shop.
Mhm.
It's going to come off as a decisive, direct person,
Sure.
but with heart.
Right.
And somebody with low self-regulation and a high D is going to come off as someone who throw tantrums.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's different. It's
Mhm. Mhm. Any other lessons or lessons learned or best practices that you'd like to share with our listeners about utilizing this multi-science approach?
God, I haven't really thought about it in so long. And one of the things with doing this for 25 years is you just kind of forget what you know.
It becomes natural. Yeah.
Yeah, it just
Everyday life.
becomes natural. There are certain reports that I share with groups before, and certain ones that I don't.
Mhm.
Like the trimetric CQ, I don't have that sent out directly after they take it. I wait until a couple days before whatever session or seminar that I take. I think it takes so if we have the proclivity to think about things in terms of how bad they are and not really think how good they are, you take that into reading the assessment, and all of a sudden you're reading some horrible things. Like my daughter, the first time she read DISC, she's a high D, and she looked at it and she says, "I don't like this. Can you change it right now?" Anyway.
Yeah, I'm 100D, so I resonate with that. That first time I saw that, I
I knew
was
there was something I
like,
liked about you.
yeah, yeah. Well, talk to us a little bit. We mentioned some of the great work you've done with some of your clients, including Haskell. And I'm going to brag a little bit. They won a pretty cool award. Was that last year, 2 years
Yeah.
ago? And
No, it's a long time. So Haskell won the Apex Award, which
yeah,
is the leadership or training magazine's top 100.
yes,
And we won it 2 years in a row. Haskell won
yeah,
it 2 years in a row. And we've been in the top 10 or the top five, no, the top 10 for, I think it's for 5 years. So we're now a part of the Hall of Fame. So
that's
yeah,
incredible. That's
yeah.
incredible. And can you talk to us a little bit about how assessments have impacted that? Have they? Is that part of it?
Yeah, so when I first started working with Haskell, it was me and one other guy that the internal guy, and now in learning and development, there's a team of 14 people, and
Oh,
that
wow.
yeah, it's pretty incredible, and there's some really gifted people. There's a woman named Maria Jose Toro. There's a woman named Taylor Williams and Liz Powell. Liz and Taylor, or excuse me, Liz and Maria Jose are certified in the instruments, and so it's become not just me that is evangelizing, and the company's grown quite a bit. When I first started working with them, they had 600 employees. Now they've got over 2,500, and so that has expanded exponentially. So they do a thing called supervisor series, and assessments are a part of that. They do team buildings. They do all kinds of stuff, and it's really cool to see how the how it's grown within the company, how the influence has grown within the company.
That's really, really incredible.
Yeah.
Congratulations, because
Thanks.
that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, it'll be really cool. February is when the next award ceremony is, and we get to be put into the Hall of Fame. So it'll be really neat.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, and I've been involved in the logistics business for many years as well, and so my primary customers are logistics companies or warehousing companies, and I've loved being part of that because all of my clients are either privately held or ESOPs, and there's just a different level of passion within that group of people.
Sure. Well, and getting the chance to learn about yourself and really understand how that shows up in a workplace. It's pretty incredible that those organizations are investing in their people that way as well.
It is, and I just have to say thank you to TTI for allowing me the opportunity to be involved with you. It's been a great ride. I've known a lot of people that have come, some that have gone. That certainly we miss Bill and some of the other folks that have been a part of the network. But it's been a great ride, and I would recommend it to anybody.
I didn't pay you to say that, but thank you. We feel the same about you, Chip. We absolutely do. All right, so we're kind of at time here. We need to start wrapping up a little bit. So the hardest question of this conversation is coming. So prepare yourself.
Okay.
One thing. You can only leave our listeners with one thing. Thinking about your experience and using multiple sciences, what's the one thing you want folks to remember about our conversation or to take with them? Someone who may not be familiar with assessments or have the opportunity to use them.
Boy, the easiest thing is to cop out and say, just use them because they're really wonderful. And this is probably more that you wanted, but I'm constantly amazed by the people that are in the business that won't get certified in ACI or won't get certified in other tools and stick with one or two tools. There is just so much opportunity with all of the rest of the tools. I mean, we mentioned stress quotient, but I love stress quotient. I really do. I love what it can tell you, and I love the aha moments that people have from that. And I'd like to evangelize a little bit about that. But don't get stuck. Don't get stuck doing things the way you've always done them. Just take the time and learn everything you can about the sciences. Whether it's joining the Hartman Institute or doing any of the classes that TTI has. It's be curious and take everything to the next level, because it's really boring if you don't.
I think that's a great note to leave on. Be curious. And don't.
Yeah, I finally got around to a point, didn't I?
I love it. Well, Chip, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great conversation. It flew by, and I hope that our listeners can see and feel the passion that you have for your clients in utilizing these assessments. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend some time with you. Thank you so much.
Brittney, it's always so good to see you as well.
Thank you. And folks, we'll see you on our next episode of Working Progress. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.